The crash was not loud. It was silent, like a whisper in the wind. The small human escape pod hit the soft ground of planet Varnuk 3 with a thud, sending a cloud of dust into the red sky. Birds flew off. The trees, if they were trees at all, bent. Away from the heat, inside the pod, Captain Mira Klein opened her eyes. Her head hurt. Her ribs were sore. Blood trickled from a cut on her cheek. But she was breathing, alive. System check. She whispered. A blue light blinked twice on the small panel beside her. Life support, failed. Oxygen, low. Metal supplies, lost. Mira sighed and looked at her hands. No gloves, no armor. Just her. Jumpsuit, torn at the sleeve, and a knife made of ceramic useless now. Then she remembered the warning. One rule. No metal, not just a suggestion. Not a law for citizens. It was something deeper, an instinctive terror shared by every alien species that lived or passed near this world. No metal allowed. Not in tools. Not in weapons. Not in bones. She had read the old reports before her mission. They were strange, confusing. Some said the planet melted metal. Others said drove machines mad. But the most common report said this: metal invites the planet to kill you. Across the sky, high above her pod, 6 pairs of alien eyes watched her through drones and glass screens. They were the Ver's observers, the current watchers of Varnuk 3. We have a new arrival, one hissed. A human? Another clicked. She won't last, the leader said. None of them do. They watched the screen. Mira stood outside the pod now. The camera zoomed in on her face, tired eyes. Calm breath. She wasn't panicking. That was new. Myra looked at the jungle ahead. The plants were tall, with wide blue leaves that shimmered like oil. Vines hung like snakes. The ground pulsed in some places, as if something under the soil was breathing. She checked her belt. No tools, no scanner. Only a small satchel with 2 water packs and a survival kit, mostly useless without metal. She touched a vine. It didn't react. She walked under it. The air was heavy. The jungle smelled like rot and burned plastic. Her footsteps were soft, careful. She didn't rush. She moved like a hunter, not a survivor. The Vara's leader frowned. She's not acting like the others. Most humans who crashed here panicked. They tried to build shelters from escape pod parts. That meant metal. Always metal. And always the same result. The planet rejected them. Machines corroded within. Minutes, knives turned to ash. Implants in their bones overheated and burned their organs. Even the animals avoided humans who carried metal. Not out of fear, but as if they knew something would kill the intruder for them. Mira had read the stories. She didn't plan to fight this planet. She planned to understand it. After an hour of walking, she found a tall stone by a river bend. She sat under it, took a sip of water, and opened her small field journal. It was paper-based human science. At its most primitive, she wrote, Day 1, no metal. The air feels charged. There is something alive in the soil, like the planet has nerves. She paused and looked up. Something was watching her. Not a predator. Not a drone. Something else. A tree. No, it had eyes. Small and black. Watching from the folds of a thick branch. She didn't look away. She nodded. The eyes blinked and vanished into the bark. Far above, one of the Vars hissed. She made contact. She didn't scream, another noted. She accepted it. The leader clicked slowly. That's not good. Mira left the river and moved deeper into the jungle. The deeper she went, the stranger it became. The trees grew closer together, their roots twisting like arms. Slime dripped from moss patches. Insects the size of her hand buzzed near her neck but never landed. She stayed calm, and then she found it. A skeleton. Not human, not alien. Something big, beast-like. The bones were long, curved, and pure white. They looked strong. Untouched. By time, no bite marks. No burn, but more than that, they were clean. Too clean. She bent down and tapped one of the ribs. It made a soft, deep tone. The planet allowed these. Mira smiled. Bones don't melt, she whispered. She didn't need metal. She had structure. She pulled vines from the nearby trees. They were sticky, flexible, strong. She tested one. It held when pulled. It hardened when twisted. Then she tried the slime moss, rubbed it between her fingers. It dried quickly, leaving behind a tight, smooth layer. Glue, sealant, possibly insulation. In under 3 hours, she had built a test frame, a triangle made from 2 long bones and vine tension. It stood in the ground like a spear. When she returned to it the next morning, it was still there. No rot, no collapse, no attack. The Vores were quiet now. She's building something, one said. Not metal. Another added nervously. She doesn't need metal, the leader growled. She's adapting. By day 2, Mira had gathered more bones. Some were from dead beasts, some. She wasn't sure. They were thin, sharp, carved already, like tools, but organic. Perhaps a creature made them. Perhaps another visitor used them. Long ago. Either way, they were hers now. She began tying them into shape squares, beams, small arches. Then she did something strange. She built a circle in the mud. A wide one, bones around the edge, slime holding the base. She poured water into the center. Then waited. The water didn't drain. The pool stayed. She had made a filter basin. The Vers leader shook his head. She's not just surviving. She's testing the planet. Night came fast on Varnock 3. The jungle glowed faintly. The air turned cold. Strange sounds filled the darkness. Most humans lost hope on the first night. The silence, the pressure, the shadows, too much. But Mira slept. She lay under a curved root, wrapped in a bed of moss. With one hand on a bone shard she had shaped like a blade. She wasn't afraid. She dreamed of Earth. Of war. Of all the places that had tried to kill her before. This was just one more. And this time, she was ready. The Vers grew quiet. No one spoke. For the first time. They didn't know what the human would do next. They only knew one thing. She was still alive. And that was a problem. The sun didn't rise on Varnock-3. Instead, the sky slowly turned from black to purple. The air grew warmer, thicker, and wet. The plants began to move not because of wind, but because they wanted to. Captain Myra Klein stood from her moss bed and stretched. Her back cracked, her legs were stiff, but she was alive. No wounds, no attacks. This was day 2. She looked around carefully. Her small pile of bones was still there. Her test frame still stood. The small pool of water inside the circle still held clear. Not poisoned, a good sign, but now came the real danger. The jungle was awake. In the distance, the trees began to shift and shake. Giant red leaves curled inward. Roots pulled themselves out of the dirt, dragging slow-moving trunks across the ground. Like crabs, the forest moved. Mira didn't blink. She had seen strange things before. War zones, death worlds, but nothing like this. She picked up her satchel, checked her bone shard blade, and started walking toward a deeper area of the jungle. She needed more bones, stronger ones, maybe thicker than what she had found yesterday. And she needed something better than slime. Something she could use to seal walls. Above the clouds, the Vers observers watched from their station. She walks into the death roots. One hissed. No one returns from there. She is not like the others, the leader answered coldly. She learns. As Myra entered the death roots, she noticed something strange. The trees here were tall and black, no leaves. Just bark that looked like burned skin. The ground had no grass, no flowers, only thick mud. And bones. Hundreds of bones, long ones, flat ones, tiny ones from birds, thick ones from giant beasts. Some white, some gray, Some blackened like charcoal. Mira knelt down beside a large rib. It was wider than her thigh. Heavy, strong. She tapped it with a small rock. Thunk. Solid. She smiled. This forest didn't just kill things, it preserved them. Suddenly, a soft gurgling sound echoed from behind a tree. Mira turned. Quietly, slowly, something was watching her. She crouched low, pulled the bone shard from her belt, and waited. No panic, just silence. Then from behind a fallen trunk, a long shape slithered into view. It wasn't a snake. Not exactly. It was a creature of mud and roots, with two glassy eyes and a mouth full of moving teeth sideways. Not vertical. It didn't attack. It just sniffed. Then it looked at Mira and turned away. Mira stared at it, breathing carefully. That creature could have torn her in half, but it didn't, because she had no metal. She was part of the forest now. Just another soft, clever animal. She smiled to herself. She had passed another test. An hour passed. Then Mira gathered what she needed: 12 large bones, some as long as her arms. She also found thick gray vines growing from the sides of old trees. She tested one, pulled it, stretched it, even chewed it. The taste was bitter, but it stuck to her teeth like glue. She had found her new sealant. She packed it all into a sled she made by tying bones into a flat platform. She used twisted vines as rope and dragged it behind her. Every step, she listened. Every sound, she studied. At the edge of the death roots, something unexpected happened. A large pile of metal, a shipwreck, stood in the mud. Old, rusted, melted, black. Mira walked slowly toward it. It was a human escape pod. Long dead. But something moved inside. She crouched and peeked in. A skeleton, human, curled in a ball, still wearing a melted chest plate. Next to it, a handwritten message burned into the inner wall with fire charcoal. Don't build with metal. It wakes the forest. Mira nodded. She already knew. The Vura's observers said nothing for a long time. She found the wreck. One whispered, "She understands the warning," another said. "She may be more dangerous than we thought." The leader said, "She does not fear the planet. She listens to it." Back at her camp, Mira started working. She used the new bones to create tall vertical poles like ribs of a giant animal. She curved them inward, tied them together with sticky vine, and began shaping a dome. The shelter was growing. Fast, strong. No metal. No heat tools. No power. Only bones, vines, and forest knowledge. But she didn't stop there. She took the thickest bones and cracked them open. Inside, marrow. She mixed it with slime and plant fiber. She tested it on a flat rock. After an hour in the sun, it hardened like ceramic. Perfect for the roof. She called it Bone-Crete. By nightfall, her camp had changed. No longer just a pile of supplies. Now, it looked like a real home. A rib-shaped shelter. A water basin. A bone-crete roof. And inside soft moss bedding, heat stones, and smoke vents. All natural. All allowed by the planet. And still, the forest had not attacked. But something was changing. In the far trees, a beast was watching. Tall, hunched, with 6 legs and black fur. Its eyes glowed green. It stepped forward, then stopped. It sniffed the air and stepped back. It did not attack, because something about the shelter confused it. It smelled alive, not like a machine, not like metal. The beast backed into the forest and vanished. The Vuras were now worried. Even the stalkers avoid her. One said, "She has become part of the system." Another whispered, "She has made the forest accept her," said the leader, "and now she's building inside the rules." That is human danger, not force, adaptation. That night, Mira sat under the stars. She opened her field journal again. Day 2. The forest eats everything, but not me. Not yet. I think it sees me as one of its own. She paused. Then wrote again. I can build here. Not just survive. Build something real. She closed the book and looked at her shelter. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't strong like steel, but it stood tall. It stood safe. And tomorrow, it would grow. The shelter was growing. Captain Mira Klein stood outside her strange bone hut, wiping sweat from her forehead. The air was hot. The sky was cloudy with red mist. Still, she worked. She had spent 3 days on the edge of the forest. 3 days. Without metal. 3 days without tools. And yet, she had built more than any other human survivor before her. The shelter was not small anymore. It had shape. It had purpose. It was made from the bones of dead creatures, the vines of living trees, and the slime from the forest floor. It looked like a giant rib cage, shaped into a dome. The walls breathed slightly with the wind, and the roof curved like a shell, and it was alive with meaning. In the sky, high above the planet, the Vars observers watched her every move. She is building with death. One hissed, the bones of fallen beasts, another whispered. This is not shelter. It is a warning. The leader of the Vars narrowed his eyes. She does not build like a soldier. She builds like a predator. Mira added another rib to the outer wall. This one was longer, curved, sharpened at the edge. She placed it carefully at the front, above the doorway. It looked like a tooth. She smiled. The shelter was beginning to look like the skull of some ancient creature, part home, part beast. She didn't just want to survive here. She wanted the forest and the things watching from the shadows too. No one thing. The space belongs to me. Inside the shelter, the air was cool. Mira had lined the floor with dry leaves and thick moss. She had created sleeping space, water storage, even a simple wind vent made from twisted bones and fan-like leaves. But the most important thing was sound. She had discovered something strange. When she placed certain bones in the walls, thin, hollow ones, they echoed. Whispers, footsteps, wind all bounced inside the shelter and made small vibrations. At first, Mira thought it was just a trick, but on her second night, the bones warned her. A creature had passed near her camp, big, slow, dangerous, but she heard it through the walls. The bones had spoken. She started calling them her ear bones. Now she placed them in different parts of the shelter, carefully angled. Some near the door, some near the back, and 2 hanging above her sleeping space. They weren't just decoration. They were her early warning system, above the jungle. The Vars observers grew tense. She is listening, one said. She is making the shelter here for her. Another whispered. Even our drones make no sound near her walls, said the leader. This shelter is not a home. It is a hunter's nest. Mira added more to the structure. She used sticky sap and crushed bark to seal small holes in kufei. The roof. She learned how to boil slime with root fiber to make thick glue. She mixed crushed bone into it to form a kind of mud-cement. She called it bone plaster. It stuck hard and dried fast. Now her shelter was water resistant. Even the red acid rain couldn't melt it. She tested it by pouring water on the roof. It slid off like oil. Success. Then she made something even stranger. She built a second layer inside. A ring of smaller bones standing upright in the middle of the floor. Not just for structure. This was something else. A circle. A pattern. She carved shapes into the bones, symbols, arrows. Dots. Not random. They were tactical signs, military marks. Mira was building a command space, a place where she could plan, a place where others might follow. She didn't stop there. From the trees, she gathered glowing moss and sticky blue roots. She crushed them together into a soft paste that gave off light at night. She smeared it on the inner walls in patterns, some like maps, some like warnings. To anyone else, it would look like strange art. But to Mira, it was code. Her shelter was becoming a record, a living journal, a silent message. She sat by the doorway that night, looking out at the jungle. She whispered to herself, "They'll come looking. Eventually, someone will. And when they do, they'll understand what I built." The Vars didn't understand. Not fully. but they felt something. This shelter was not made to survive, it was made to speak. It was a message. The next day, Mira dragged a new set of bones to the shelter. These ones were special, black, smooth, shaped like armor plates. She had found them near the death roots. She used them to build a low wall around the outside of her shelter, sharp, curved pieces facing outward. Not for looks. Defense. The wall made it hard for anything to charge her. Home. She called it her shell line. By now, the shelter looked like a mix of cave and beast. Sharp bones lined the front. Glowing moss lit the inside. The roof curved like a turtle's back, and inside the walls heard. The shelter did not just protect Mira. It warned her, taught her, answered her. She was not hiding in the jungle. She was controlling part of it. On the 5th night, something strange happened. A creature walked into her camp. It was small, maybe the size of a cat. Covered in fur and leaf-like plates. It didn't attack. It sniffed the shelter, walked around the shell line. Then it entered. Mira froze. The creature walked to the center of the shelter and sat near the bone circle. It didn't growl, didn't scream. It just stared at her with wide green eyes. Then it made a sound. Click, click, click. A pattern. Then it left. Mira wrote in her journal, "The shelter is alive now. It speaks. And today." The forest answered. The verse were no longer calm. First the animals avoid her. Now they enter her home. She has become part of the jungle. She's not a guest anymore. She is building territory. Mira looked up at the sky that night. Red clouds rolled by. The stars were hidden. She took out a bone shard and began carving again. On the main rib above her door, she wrote 3 words: nitrogen monoxide. Metal, nitrogen monoxide, fear. It was a law now. Her law. In the coming days, Mira would build more towers, traps, strange devices powered by plants and bone. But tonight, the shelter stood alone, a beast made from the dead, and Mira, its builder, sat calmly inside, sharpening a bone spear, listening to the jungle whisper around her. Captain Mira Klein sat inside her strange bone shelter. It was her 6th day on the alien world. Varnuk 3. A world where metal was forbidden. A world where machines melted and steel turned to dust. But Mira had survived. No, not just survived. She had built. And now her shelter stood tall and strong. Made from bones, vines, sap, and slime. Covered in glowing moss and hardened paste. It looked alive, like a giant animal crouched in the jungle. But something new was happening, something inside. The walls was watching. The wind moved softly outside. Red mist drifted through the trees. The jungle pulsed, as if breathing. Inside the shelter, Mira sharpened a bone spear. Her back was straight, her eyes alert. She had carved more symbols into the wall's military code, escape directions, old earth markings. No one else would understand them. Not yet, but one day, someone would come. Another human, and they would read the story she was building. But tonight, she wasn't thinking about the future. She was listening. The hollow bones in the walls, the ones she called her ear bones, were making strange sounds, not normal creaks or forest whines. No, these were soft clicks, like claws. Tapping. Tap. Pause. Tap. Tap. Mira froze. She slowly reached for her bone blade. Not because she was afraid, but because the sound was new. She pressed her ear to the wall. Another sound came. Whisper of breath. Long. Slow. Not hers. Something was outside, walking around the shelter. Not crashing through like a beast. No, it was studying. Like a scout. Or a hunter. High above, in orbit, the Ver's observers leaned close to their screens. She hears it. One said, "She knows." Another whispered, "Then why doesn't she run?" Asked a third. The Vori's leader's eyes narrowed. Because she built this place to be hunted. And now she's waiting for the first move. Mira stood slowly and walked to the back of the shelter. There, She had created a small opening covered in thick slime leaves. A one-way window. She peeled it open a little and looked out. At first nothing. Then, behind a tree, she saw eyes. Not human. Animal. Bright, yellow, round, UNBLINKING. Too high off the ground to be a crawler. Too low to be a flyer. Mira narrowed her eyes. Was it a native? A scout drone? A machine in disguise? No metal wouldn't survive here, which meant ... Something was watching her with its own eyes. She closed the slit and backed away quietly. Then she smiled. Good. She had wanted this. She picked up one of the long bones tied to a vine and pulled it gently. The trap on the roof tightened. Her shelter wasn't just walls now. It had defenses. She had lined the roof with dried root sacks that exploded into smoke when pierced. She had added jawbones with sharpened tips on pressure vines outside the front line. She had trained her shelter to respond. And tonight might be the first test. Outside, the watcher moved closer. It stepped softly. Its claws didn't sink into the mud. Its shape blended with the shadows. But the eyes, those glowing yellow eyes, gave it away. It stopped just outside the bone circle and waited. Myra didn't move. She sat quietly, hands on her knees, breathing slow. She didn't want to scare it. She wanted it to step forward. She wanted it to cross the line. Just one more step. The watcher moved, but not forward. It vanished into the trees. Mira waited. 10 seconds, 20, a full minute. Nothing. Then she stood, walked outside, and checked the pressure vines. No break. She circled the shelter. All quiet, but something was different. She turned to the front ribs, the ones above the door, and there, on one of the bones, a mark. 3 claw lines, long, sharp, fresh, not a full attack. A message. Back inside. Mira lit a small moss lantern and sat near the inner ring of carved bones. Her fingers traced the old military symbols. Enemy contact. Tested perimeter. Observer species. Unknown. No metal. No tools. Pure instinct. She wrote in her journal. The forest sent a scout. Not a beast. Something smarter. It tested my shelter. Then left a message. Why? What is it waiting for? In the Verres station, panic was rising. They have never done that before. One said, they fear the shelter. Another replied, no, the leader growled. They are measuring her, just like she measured them. The next morning, Mira made changes. She added new bones to the ceiling, flat ones with holes. When wind passed through, they made low, soft sounds. She tuned them like instruments. Now, even the wind would speak to her. She placed dried shells in a circle near the door. If anything stepped on them, they would crack. More sound. More signals. More eyes inside the walls. That afternoon, it rained. Not normal rain. Red. Acidic mist drifted down from the sky. It sizzled on leaves, melted fallen branches, but when it hit Myra's shelter, it rolled off the bonecrete roof like oil. The shelter stood, unharmed. The jungle hissed, but did not strike. Mira sat at the doorway, carving new symbols. She was not afraid of being hunted. She was becoming the hunter. This shelter was not just her home. It was her fortress. And it could grow. That night, the watcher returned. She didn't see it, but she heard it. The ear bones vibrated with a strange rhythm, short bursts, spaced evenly. A signal. Like speech, like code. Mira didn't answer. Not yet. She waited. The watcher didn't attack. It just walked the full circle around her shelter. Then left again. Mira wrote in her journal. It's trying to talk, not with words. With motion, with sound. My shelter is not hiding me anymore. It's introducing me. The Voorhees had no more comments. Only fear, because they knew what was happening now. The human wasn't adapting to the planet. She was making the planet adapt to her. The shelter was changing too. The walls didn't just Hold bones. They held meaning. Sound patterns, markings, hidden warnings. Protection signals. To Mira, it felt like her old command post back during the Mars conflict. Simple, tough, quiet, smart, built from nothing but made to last. Now she was doing it again, on a world where no machine could live. No metal could survive. But where bones remembered, she sat under the arch of sharpened ribs and looked up at the night sky. The stars were gone again, covered by thick clouds. She whispered, "I'm still here." And the shelter whispered back through its bones and wind, "We know." Captain Mira Klein stood in the doorway of her strange shelter. The jungle was silent, too silent. Even the wind didn't move the trees. The vines were still. No bird sounds, no insects, no watchers. Something was wrong. The air felt heavy. Not like weather, like a warning. Mira narrowed her eyes. She had been on Varnuk 3 for 7 days now. She had built a full shelter using only bones, vines, slime, and glue. She had made it strong. The walls listened. The roof was sealed. The animals kept their distance. But now the jungle was hiding something. Something quiet. Something dangerous. Above the planet, in the orbiting station, the Vor's observers sat in silence. They had sent the probe. It was their decision. She must not build more. One said, "She's changing the balance," another whispered. Probe was small, thin, fast, coated in biomatter to hide its shape, and most importantly, it had no metal. It would slide through the jungle like a shadow. No sound, no trail. It would enter her shelter and destroy it from the inside. Mira felt the change before she saw anything. Inside her shelter, one of the ear bones made a soft chirp, not a wind sound, a warning. She crouched low and held her breath. Then she saw it, a movement near the back wall, not large. Just a flicker, but wrong. She slid across the floor like a ghost, no sound under her feet. She pressed her hand against the bone wall and leaned forward. There, near the vent, a shape thin, smooth, moving sideways like a crab. Not an animal. Not natural. She pulled a small sack from under her bedding. It was filled with dried slime powder, mixed with crushed root and spores. She had tested it before. It caused instant smoke. When exposed to open air, a natural flash bomb. She waited until the probe moved again. Then she threw it. Boom. A burst of thick, white smoke filled the shelter. The probe made a strange whine, like a buzzing insect trying to scream. Then it charged. Mira rolled aside. Just in time. The thing moved fast, too fast. It slammed into the wall, cracked a few bones, then turned and aimed again. But Mira was ready. She grabbed her spear made from the leg bone of a dead crawler and held it low. She didn't need to kill it. She just needed it out. As the probe rushed forward, she stepped aside and jabbed her spear into the ground, forming a trip point. The creature hit the spear, flipped, and crashed into the shell wall. The trap activated. Above, one of the root sacks dropped and exploded. More smoke. More spores. Probe began to spin wildly, its thin legs twitching. It had no lungs, no blood, but it couldn't see, couldn't track, and that's when Mira struck. She grabbed the largest jawbone from her bone pile and smashed it down. Crack. The probe stopped moving. Dead. She stood over the wreck. It looked like a beetle made of plant tissue and black shell. Number. Wires, no metal, but clearly designed. Built. "Someone sent you," she said quietly. She bent down and opened a flap on the back. Inside, instead of circuits, she found compressed bark, slime tubes, and a core made of hardened crystal. Not tech. Alien. Bio-machinery. And worse, it had writing. Not human. Not random, but controlled. A Vara's language. In the sky. The Vara's leader slammed a claw on the table. "She knows," he hissed. "We broke our law," said one observer. "We used tech just like she warned us not to. And now she will answer." Mira dragged the broken probe outside her shelter. She placed it on a flat stone and carved 3 marks on its side. I saw. I understood. I'm still here. Then she lit a small patch of glowing moss beneath it. The fire was slow, smokeless, but it burned the probe to ash. She turned her back on it and returned to her shelter. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. That night, the jungle was no longer silent. It screamed, not in sound, but in motion. Trees twisted. Vines dropped from above. Eyes stared from every shadow. Even the wind howled through the bone holes. The forest was afraid. It had seen what she did, and it remembered. Inside the shelter, Mira worked fast. She reinforced the outer wall, added more sharpened ribs around the shell. She placed new trap vines at the back. She hung more ear bones in corners to hear better, and then she carved new symbols inside the shelter. Attacked by shadow, shelter held, strength proven. This wasn't just her record. This was her message. The next morning, something strange happened. Near the edge of the forest, just outside her camp, she found a pile of bones. Clean, fresh, stacked like an offering. Beast bones. Not human. Placed carefully in a ring. The forest had given her a gift or a sign. She took them without a word, added them to her shelter, and felt something change in the air. The jungle wasn't testing her anymore. It was recognizing her. The Vurs were silent again. One finally spoke. We tried to erase her. She turned the attack into strength. She didn't just survive, said the leader. She made the forest side with her. Back inside the shelter, Mira sat at the center. The wind blew through the high vents, making soft music. The walls creaked with calm. She closed her eyes and smiled. The shelter had survived. A true attack. It was no longer a simple home. It was a symbol. Had become the first living structure, designed by a human mind but built by nature's rules. A shelter with eyes. A shelter with memory. And now, a shelter with power. Captain Mira Klein sat inside her shelter, carving slow, deep lines into a flat bone plate. The shelter was quiet today. The jungle was calm. The wind didn't bring smoke or rain. The air was still, like it was waiting. Her hands moved carefully. Every cut mattered. The bone was smooth, almost like stone now. It had been polished by time or fire, maybe both. Mira didn't find it. The forest gave it to her. Placed it at the edge of her clearing in a ring of moss and bark, with not a single tooth mark. A gift. Or a challenge, and Mira understood what she had to do. She was not carving pictures. She was carving language, not Earth Standard, not Varese. Runes, something new. A mix of human military signs, survival symbols, and forest shapes. She called it the shelter script. It was simple, strong, and full of warning. On the top of the bone plate, she carved, "We do not use metal." Underneath, in smaller lines, "Because we do not need it." And at the bottom, she placed 3 curved symbols. "This place is protected." Mira stood and looked at the wall. Then, she lifted the bone plate and hung it on the outside of the shelter above the doorway. The sign shone in the jungle light, smooth, white, clear. A message to anyone, alien, animal, or forest, who came close. This is a human shelter. Not weak, not lost, but changed. And claimed. Above the planet, in the Vura station, one of the watchers hissed. "She is spreading her symbols. She writes warnings," another said. "She's building culture." The Vura's leader growled. And he was right. Mira's shelter wasn't just a survival structure anymore. It was turning into a message. The forest had noticed too, every day. Since she burned the Vura's probe, strange things happened. One day, she found twisted vines braided in a loop outside her shell wall. The next, a dead beast freshly killed placed near her water basin. Then 3 birds sat in a perfect triangle on her roof for 5 minutes, watching, waiting, then gone. Not accidents, not mistakes. The forest was responding. learning her language. Or sending one of its own. Mira began carving more. Inside the shelter. She cleared a section of wall. She called it the message ring. Every night, she added one bone plate. Each told a part of her story. The crash. The rule, no metal. The first build. The silent watcher. The smoke trap. The probe attack. Each plate had words, symbols, and marks in the new language. Each one had truth. She didn't carve alone anymore. She had found something. Knew something stranger than anything else on Varnok-3. In a deep part of the jungle, near the black trees of the death roots. She discovered a wall, not made by her. Not natural. It was formed from ancient beast skulls. Stacked, cleaned, set in shape, and every skull was marked. Lines, shapes, rings, just like her own symbols. Not identical, but close. Too close to be random. Mira stood in front of the wall for hours. She didn't move. Didn't blink. She traced the lines on the skulls with her fingers. Someone had been here before. Another builder. Another survivor. Another human? No, she looked at the skulls. They weren't shaped like human skulls. Long jaws, 4 eyes. Wide ridges. Not human, but still. They carved messages. Left stories. Maybe thousands of years ago. Maybe yesterday. And Mira understood. She was not the first to talk to the forest, but she might be the first to answer. She returned to her shelter with new energy. Now, every bone she carved was not just memory. It was part of a conversation. She changed her message ring, reorganized the plates, connected the signs, turned them into cycles. Not just a wall anymore. Now it was a code book. If anyone else arrived here, crashed, stranded, lost, they could read it piece by piece. And learn what she learned. One day later, something happened. A sound from the eastern jungle. Not footsteps, not wind, a voice. One word, spoken in the open air. Sound she didn't recognize, but something about it made her heart beat faster. It wasn't animal noise. It wasn't growl or screech. It was spoken. By something intelligent. She didn't go toward the sound, not yet. Instead, she added a new plate to the outer wall of her shelter. This time she carved, "We hear, we watch, we answer." And she made sure the letters faced the trees. A direct reply. That night, the forest changed. No attack. No watchers. But Mira knew. They were listening. Not just the beasts. Not just the trees. Something else. Something old. Maybe. Something that built the skull wall. Maybe something that left the first messages. And now, Mira had joined the chain. The Vers were silent for hours. Then one finally said, "She's building a language that spreads. She's turning survival into influence." She turned a pile of bones into a civilization seed, the leader said coldly. "If more humans see this, everything changes." Inside the shelter, Mira sat in the center of the ring of bones. Her weapons lay beside her. Her tools were drying on the moss floor. Her food was stored in dry sacks. Her warning traps were reset. Everything was calm. Except her mind. She wrote in her journal, "The shelter speaks now. Not just to me, not just to the forest, but to something older. Something buried in this world's memory. And maybe they're speaking back." She closed the journal and smiled. For the first time since the crash, she didn't feel like a lost soldier. She felt like a builder of something new. Not Earth. Not Varnok. Something in between. Captain Mira Klein stood near the edge of the jungle. The trees here were darker. The ground was soft. The vines didn't swing. They curled low like watching snakes. This was where she had first heard the voice. The strange word that came from deep inside the trees. She didn't come to fight. She didn't bring her spear. Just her knife, her journal, and a bone-carved symbol tied around her neck, the first mark of her new written language. Today, she wasn't here as a soldier. She was here as a messenger. To listen. To find out what the forest remembered. The air was thick, sticky, The sky above was green-gray with mist. No sound of animals. No wind, but Mira could feel it. The forest was awake. Watching her, testing her, she stepped slowly through the trees. Not on the paths used by animals, but where the ground was untouched. Each step was careful. Each footstep placed between roots. She walked for nearly an hour. Then she saw it. The memory pit. It wasn't really a pit. Not at first. It looked like a shallow bowl in the ground, overgrown with moss, surrounded by massive trees shaped like ribs pointing to the sky. But the deeper she looked, the more she saw bones. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Not scattered, not broken. Placed in rings, in rows, in tall shapes that looked like symbols. She knelt at the edge. One skull in the center of the pit had 4 eye holes. Not human. Not beast. Foot. Familiar. She had seen the same shape at the bone wall near the death roots. Someone had come here long ago. Someone had built a shelter just like hers, but instead of walls, they built a memory pit, and they carved messages into the bones. The same curved signs Mira had begun using. The same flowing symbols. This forest remembered its visitors. It kept their bones like books. Mira stepped into the pit. The air grew cold. The moss under her boots was soft, but her every move stirred the fog around the bones. She didn't speak. She didn't touch anything. She just watched. Listened. And waited. Then she heard it. Soft sound. Not wind. Not beast. Not speech. Just. A rhythm. 3 soft thumps. A pause. Then 2 more. Then silence. Then it repeated. Mira sat near the central skull and closed her eyes. The sound wasn't from her. It wasn't in her ears. It was in the bones. Somehow the pit was still alive. Not like a body, not breathing, but remembering. Repeating. Carrying a message. She took out her journal and wrote the pattern down. 3 thumps. Pause. 2 thumps. She didn't know what it meant. Not yet, but she would. Because this wasn't just a shelter. It was a grave. And a library. Back in her own shelter. Mira added a new plate to her message ring. This time, the symbol wasn't her own. She copied the marks from the skull in the pit. Curved lines, twin circles, a broken arrow pointing up. Then she carved underneath. Not the first, not the last. This forest remembers everything. In the orbiting station above the planet, the Vor's observers were watching again. She found the pit, one whispered. She reads the old signs. She's decoding the dead, the leader said. That is dangerous. The Voras had never dared go into the memory pit. Their drones failed. Their probes melted. The ground itself rejected metal. But now, Mira had walked into it. Unarmed, alone, and the forest had not attacked. It had shown her its past, and she had understood. The next night, Mira lit her moss lantern and sat inside her shelter. She lay bones from the pit in a new circle separate from her message ring. This would be her translation ring. Each new bone would hold a phrase. Each phrase would match the pattern. From the pit, she would teach herself the rhythm, 1 line at a time. Days passed. Every morning, she walked to the pit, stayed in silence, listened, took notes. Every night, she returned and carved what she heard. And slowly. She began to understand. The first phrase she translated was simple. Metal brings death. Then, shape the world without fire. And then, the builders return to dust, but their words remain. Each phrase carved deep into bone. Her shelter was no longer just a place to live. It was becoming a living archive. Center of knowledge. And the jungle knew it. The animals no longer avoided her home. They passed near it, slept near it, left small offerings, broken fruit, smooth stones, feathers. Even the strange watcher with yellow eyes returned, but it didn't enter. It only stood at the edge of the clearing and stared. And once it nodded. Then disappeared into the trees. Mira wrote in her journal, "The forest sees me now, not as prey, not even as guest, but as part of its memory. I add my words to its story. Then, the biggest discovery came. One of the oldest bones in the pit, half buried and covered in thick moss, held something strange. A new symbol. One that looked almost human. A triangle. Inside it, a dot. Outside it, 3 arrows. It was old, very old, but it was Earth design. Human tactical symbol. She froze. Was it left by someone from Earth? Centuries ago, before Varnuk was listed as untouched by command. Or did someone from another world long ago use the same ideas? Was language repeating? Was survival always the same? She carved it into her shelter's doorway, this time with no words, just the triangle and the dot. A symbol that meant, we are here. In the Vura's station, silence filled the control deck. One of the observers stood slowly. She's building a memory that will last longer than machines. She's talking to the planet itself. She's not a survivor anymore, the leader said, voice low. She's the voice of everyone who was ever here, and Mira just kept carving. She didn't need their approval. She didn't care who watched, because she had found something greater than fear, something greater than survival. She had found meaning, a shelter with walls that listened, a jungle that remembered, and a language built on the bones of the dead. The forest was quiet, too quiet. Not with fear, but with respect. Captain Mira Klein stood at the doorway of her shelter. Her hands rested against the curved ribs of bone. The wind moved slowly through the holes in the walls, making soft, hollow music. It had been 12 days since she crash-landed on Varnuk 3. 12 days without metal. 12 days without command. 12 days. That changed everything. Now, the shelter she built wasn't just for her. It was alive. She had added over 30 message bones to the inner wall, each one carved with her new language. Some told warnings. Some told history. Some carried forest knowledge. And some were answers, because something had started to respond, not just animals. Not just the watchers, but the shelter itself. It began 3 nights ago. Mira had been asleep. The wind was strong. Suddenly a loud knock came from the center bone ring. She woke instantly, weapon ready, but there was no threat. No beast, no probe. No sign of movement. Only one thing was different. One of her hanging bone plates had changed position, not fallen, turned, and the symbols she had carved were now mirrored. Backwards. She thought it was just the wind. But the next night, it happened. Again. Another plate. Another change. Then, something even stranger. A new mark appeared. A symbol she had never carved. A spiral inside a box. It was cut deep. Not with a sharp blade, but with pressure. Like something had pushed from the inside of the bone. She stared at it for hours. Then she finally whispered, "You're answering me, aren't you?" The shelter didn't reply in words, but a soft breeze came through the wall vents, and the music that followed sounded like a yes. Above the planet. In the Vera's station, the watchers had no more debates. She has gone too far. She made the shelter into a living memory. And now, it's speaking back. She's building a thinking structure with no metal, no AI. No, just with understanding and with bones. The Vura's leader stood slowly. "We cannot stop her now." One watcher hissed, "Then what do we do?" The leader replied, "We record. We learn. We stay away, because this is no longer her shelter." He looked down at the image on the screen. This is the forest's voice now. And the human taught it how to speak. Mira didn't stop. She carved a new circle around her bone ring. This one wasn't just messages. This was a dialogue ring. Each plate now had a response space. Half Mira's words, half symbols that slowly began to match the forest's patterns. The rhythm from the memory pit, the clicks from the watchers, the curved signs from the old skull wall. All of it came together here, one night. A sudden storm swept over the jungle. No warning. No clouds. Just red wind and sharp acid rain. But Myra didn't run for cover. She stood inside the shelter, eyes closed, as the wind blasted against the roof and walls, and she waited. She listened, and when the wind pushed through the vents, the walls sang, not just air whistling through holes, not random sound, but patterns of repeating, a melody built from sound waves and bone, a melody that carried meaning. Myra smiled. The shelter wasn't just protecting her, it was talking. She wrote in her journal, "The shelter is no longer mine. It belongs to the memory of this place. I built it with death and survival. It answered with life and history. I thought I came here alone, but I found something greater than command. I found a voice that never stopped whispering." And then on the 13th day, something came from orbit. A rescue ship. Human. The ship hovered above the clearing. Clean, sleek, and powerful. They had tracked her emergency signal. 2 soldiers dropped down in armored suits. They scanned the clearing. Weapons ready. Then they saw it. The shelter. The bones. The shapes. The glowing moss. The bone wall. And Myra standing calmly at the center. One soldier raised his gun. "What the hell is this?" Myra stepped forward. "No weapons. Not here." The soldiers hesitated. Then the second soldier, a woman, spoke. "Captain Klein?" "You're alive?" Myra nodded. "I was never dead. Just learning." The first soldier stepped toward the shelter. Myra held up a hand. "You bring metal in there, you break the balance." "What are you talking about?" "This shelter listens," she said. "It speaks. You just don't know how to hear yet." The commander of the rescue ship called down from above. "We're here to extract you, Captain. Mission complete. Come aboard." Myra looked up at the sleek metal hull. It looked wrong now, loud, cold. She shook her head. "No, not yet." The soldiers stared at her. "You're refusing rescue?" Myra smiled. "Not refusing, just waiting." "For what?" She stepped back into the shelter, ran her hand along the walls. "The forest has one last message. I have to finish the dialogue." The soldiers didn't understand, but they didn't stop her either. They stayed back, because even they could feel it. This place was sacred now. Later that night, Myra added one final plate, the biggest bone she had. She carved slowly, deeply, carefully. At the top it read, "This shelter was built with no metal, only memory." And below it, "To whoever finds this, listen before you act. Speak before you strike. Learn before you decide who owns the wild." And finally, at the bottom, "Because even a shelter made of bones can speak with the voice of a world." She stood up, breathed in the red wind one last time, and turned. To the waiting ship, she would leave. Yes, but this shelter would stay. It was not hers anymore. It belonged to Varnok-3. It belonged to the next, who came. And when they did, the shelter would speak first.